What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Underdog Podcast, Episode 8. Just finished recording the NFC South preview, and now we're on to the Division of Death, as I like to call it, the NFC West. I literally don't know how I'm going to place these teams, man. Other than 4-1, I don't know the other two. I don't know where I'm going to place the other two yet. But this division is stupid. I mean, this division, you have a chance of 4 playoff teams. I'm not even kidding. Especially after they played up week 1, but I'm talking about even before week 1, you had a chance at all these teams making the playoffs. So we start with a 4th team. In my opinion, is going to be the Arizona Cardinals. And that's just not even from the standpoint of I don't think they have as much talent, but I also think they have the worst coach of the 4 teams, which is another reason why I'm putting them here. And I don't know about their defense, man. We'll see how their defense holds up. You start with Kyler Murray. I think I've been a little tough on Kyler Murray. Last year, I thought they should have made the playoffs. I really thought they should have made the playoffs. I think Kyler, there were some games last year, big games that they needed to win, and games they should have won where he just did not perform up to his standard, in my opinion. I think part of it had to do with a shoulder injury, and they just didn't want him to run, and he couldn't be as dynamic. But I think the game against New England, they should have won. And then there was a couple other ones last year where I was like, Kyler, what are you doing, man? But definitely the game against New England, they should have won. We had no business winning that game. But Kyler is super dynamic. He's such a fun player to watch. And it's really hard to kind of add in his running game to really design or scrambling into how good of a quarterback he is and where he is. I really think it's tough. But he's one of the more natural throws of the football. I mean, his talent is just absurd. And then they bring in Colt McCoy as a veteran backup who won some big games. I mean, he beat Seattle with the fucking Giants, man. So that's impressive himself. Never turned out to be the starter that, the Browns want him to be, but he's a solid backup. And then they have Streveler, who was their backup last year. So this running back room, a lot of people are talking about it, that they don't have a ton of talent. I like Chase Edmonds, I really do. Very good receiving back, dynamic after the catch. I think this year's his year to prove he can be at least a solid, back in the running game. I don't think he's going to be their workhorse. I think that's going to be James Conner, who's going to go in there and be their main back. But I think Chase Edmonds is probably a top 32 back in this league. I think he's better than James Conner. I just think James Conner's hit the injury bug. He hasn't been the same since that one season he took over for Bell. And I think it's a decent landing spot for Conner. I question the fit, though, because they run a lot of pistol, and I just didn't really see Conner fitting into that system. But I think Cliff Kingsbury is a smart coach. He's going to figure out what to do with them. And then Jonathan Ward and Eno Benjamin there as well behind them. Then you get to this receiving group who I think they're very dynamic, starting with DeAndre Hopkins, who, in my opinion, is the best receiver in football. And has been for a while. I've always been a D-Hop guy. I thought when you talked about him, Julio, and AB as those three, I thought, it was him and Julio. I think DeAndre Hopkins is just such a special football player. He's not, the best separator. He's not the best route runner. He's not the fastest guy. But he does 2 things, I think, better than anybody else in the league. I think he's the most physical wide receiver in football. I think, at the point of attack, if it's him and the DB right next to each other, he's more than not going to come up with the football. He's going to make you work to, make plays against him. I mean, he is incredible, man. And the second thing he does is he has the strongest hands in football. He has the strongest hands I've seen since another former Texan, Andre Johnson. I mean, his hand strength is ridiculous, man. He makes these ridiculous catches. I think, next to Fitzgerald has the best hands, in football. I mean, it's ridiculous, man. DeAndre Hopkins is a fucking freak. And then you have Christian Kirk, who they've kind of played on the outside and in the slot, and I'm kind of like, Cliff, what are you doing? I think Christian Kirk, you know, I really liked him coming out of Texas A&M. He really flashed, was a great returner, and I think really fit this scheme well in the slot coming from, I think, were they still in the Big 12 at that time? I don't know. They were in the SEC, but, you know, coming from you know, they ran more of a Big 12 offense at A&M anyways. You know, I think he really fit well in this scheme, and I thought he could dial it up with Cliff Kingsbury and really, you know, fit well. But he really hadn't fit well in this offense, you know, prior to like the end of last season. And I think they really kind of broke through with him, and I think they're going to, you know, I think he's going to be a solid contributor in this offense. And then they bring in the veteran A.J. Green, you know, as kind of that possession receiver, that chain mover, you know. I think he's kind of, you know, going to be their, nice red zone threat too for AJ Green. And then you have one of my favorite players in this draft, who I'm mad New England didn't take. But they did take Barmore, so can't be too mad that they got 2 first-round players. But Rondale Moore is a freak, man. He's a fucking freak. And Cliff Kingsbury is going to figure out how to use him. He hasn't figured out how to use Andy Isabella. And they're very similar, but I think he's going to figure out how to use Rondale Moore and really add his dynamic playmaking into this offense, which I think they desperately needed. In tight end, they don't really have anything. Max Williams is a former first-round pick from Minnesota who's kind of been a bust. Kind of a little bit of an H-back type. You know, they use kind of that tight end more as a wing behind the offense, and I think Max Williams fits that well. He's a great blocker. He's very physical, too, at that tight end position. I just think he really hasn't lived up to his potential. And then they have Darrell Daniels and Demetrius Harris, who are decent, you know, blockers. And then this offensive line, which got a nice upgrade, and I think it's underrated. DJ Humphries really stepped up to the plate last year after earning that 3-year contract. The former, I think he's a first-round pick out of Florida. You know, he was kind of an average starter, slightly above average, but I think he really stepped in and is, you know, a borderline top 10 tackle after that last season. He really earned that contract that he got last season. Justin Pugh, longtime starter, former first-round pick, kind of slowing down now with Arizona. I think he might be their weakest starter for them. I've never really been a big fan, but he's a decent, you know, starter. Then they get, you know, who's been the best center in football for a long time, you know, slowing down a little bit due to his old age, but Rodney Hudson, I cannot believe that Vegas was going to cut him, and then they get a 4th-round pick for him. I mean, he's a steal. And he's smaller, too. I think it's going to help Kyler see that middle of the field. So I think all around it's a great get. He's a great pass blocking guy, too. And then at right guard, they have Brian Winters, veteran from the Jets and the Bills, who's, you know, a decent starter. But they also have Josh Jones, who they're working in there at guard, who I thought was a steal for them in the 3rd round. They just didn't really put him on the field last year. So I think it's nice that they're getting him involved and putting him on that starting line. And then you have Kelvin Beachum, who's been a veteran, who actually probably had one of his best seasons last year for the Cardinals. Was really solid for them, you know, last season. And then you get in this defense, which is my biggest concern. Up front, you got Zach Allen, who hasn't really lived up to that the billing. He really hasn't played well at Boston College. Rashard Lawrence is your nice, you know, nose tackle, along with Corey Peters, who provides, you know, that veteran presence there, a captain on this team. You also have Lecky Fotu, who's going to be in there as a, you know, goal line package, short yardage package, run defender. He's a massive human being. And then you have J.J. Watt coming over from Houston as that great get. First play in Arizona as a TFL, because of course it was. Shout out to Brett Coleman there. But yeah, J.J. Watt, you know, somebody on air said that T.J. Watt was more dynamic and was going to be better than J.J. Watt ever was. And to you, I say, what the fuck are you on? Because J.J. Watt's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, the only 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, and J.J. Watt in his prime was unblockable. And he did it from an interior rusher where you're getting double teamed and triple teamed if you're Aaron Donald. I mean, I mean, people are just stupid, man. Sometimes I can't stand announcers. And then Michael Dogby's a decent, he's going to provide some interior pass rush there as well. And then you get to the edge, and my oh my is Chandler Jones back. I mean, he looked like the old prime Chandler Jones yesterday. But a lot of people were like, can he bounce back from this injury? And I was like, hell yeah, he can. I mean, this dude's an animal out there, and he really. He's really just a beast, man. His power is ridiculous. I mean, he's fast for a big dude too, man. I think he's like, let me look at this man. He's 6'5", 265, and he flies off the ball, man. He's ridiculous. And then you got Marcus Golden, who they're bringing back, coming back over from the Giants. He's played really good football for them. I think Marcus Golden's a solid edge defender and can play that run too. They also have Devon Kennard, who's a great veteran pass rusher there as well. And they have Victor Demukage, who I believe they took in the draft this year out of Duke as a 6th-round pick. He'll rotate into as well. And then these linebackers, Jordan Hicks is that veteran cover linebacker, who's going to be replaced by Zaven Collins, who just absolutely flies around the field, man. He's going to be him and Isaiah Simmons are going to be freaking nuts, for years to come. And then you have Isaiah Simmons, who was my Defensive Rookie of the Year pick last year. He was my number 1 player in the draft last year, besides Joe Burrow. But he struggled to learn that playbook, and I think a lot of guys did. But Isaiah Simmons really struggled. I think this year you're going to see Isaiah Simmons really step up and really become that dominant defensive player that we thought he was going to be. And then you got this secondary, and it starts with Byron Murphy in the slot. I've always been a big Byron Murphy fan. I think he's flown under the radar a lot. He's just so physical in the slot, man. Doesn't let you get off the line, and he's a physical man-to-man corner for that team, and he's just a phenomenal player. And then you got Marco Wilson, who they took out of Florida. Wondering what he's gonna offer this year. Going to be interesting to see if he becomes a strength or a weakness for this team. Going to be real interesting. And then they have veteran Robert Alford out there. If he can stay healthy, he can be a solid CB2 for them as well. And then they're lacking some depth behind them. They have Tay Gowan and a couple other guys there. And then at safety, you have Jalen Thompson, Deontay Thompson. They're both decent. Deontay Thompson was a 1st-round pick and then just kind of fell off the face of the earth and fell, I think, all the way to the 5th round. And then Jalen Thompson, as an undrafted player, kind of beat him out. It was a little bit surprising. And then you got the man who a lot of people say is overrated, but is one of my favorite players in this league, and that's Budda Baker. Budda Baker is just a stud, man. I think he lacks a little bit in coverage, but he's always around the football and is just always making plays. I think he's going to take a step up this year and potentially make an All-Pro. But Budda Baker is definitely one of my favorite players in the league. Then you go to the schedule, man. I think every division team they're going to split against. So that's 3 losses. I think they're going to lose probably at Cleveland. So that's 4. I think they pick up a tough win against Green Bay. I think they lose to Chicago. And I think they're going to lose another game. So I think they're probably going to be a 10-11 win team. But this team, every single team in this division has a chance to win the division, and they legitimately have a chance to make the playoffs. I mean, this division is absolutely loaded and is absolutely ridiculous, man. Arizona, I think if they don't make the playoffs, though, I think they're going to fire Cliff Kingsbury because that division is just too good to leave a coach that can't get it done in there. This is tough between these next 2 teams, but I'm going to go with Seattle. I just think that San Francisco's in a better position than Seattle at this current moment. I think has a better defense and has more weapons on offense. But you start with Russell Wilson, who is my QB4, without Deshaun Watson in the picture. I think Russ is he's phenomenal, man. His deep ball is probably the best in the league, better than Patrick Mahomes because it's a rainbow with that shit, man. So pretty. He throws pretty balls. I think last year his first half of the season was let Russ cook, and his second half of the season was Russ's average. I think he just needs to be consistent for a whole year, and he could potentially win the MVP. You never know. And then you got Geno Smith bust behind him from the New York Jets out of West Virginia, and then Jake Luton, who was cut by Jacksonville as they pick him up as a third back. And then this backfield, very interesting. Chris Carson is a powerful runner out of Oklahoma State, but he has injury issues. I think that's the problem with his backfield is can they stay healthy? They haven't shown to do that in the past, and it's going to be big for them if Chris Carson can stay healthy. Rashad Penny's already hurt again, former first-round pick from San Diego State. Massive bust. Hasn't been able to stay healthy for them at all. He's kind of the opposite. Would be a nice change of pace back if he could be on the field, but I think they're gonna put him on IR with a heel injury. And then Alex Collins, had that one decent season in Baltimore and then just kind of fell off. But I think he's gonna be a decent change of pace back for them for the Seahawks this season. And then they have Travis Homer, who they took last year in the draft. Decent return guy as well. Then you get to this receiving core. DK Metcalf, it's very hard to guard him. He's fucking massive, man. I mean, his upper body is just like it just seems inhuman, and the speed he runs at is ridiculous. He's not your typical route runner. He's gonna run digs, comebacks, goes, and slants. I mean, and it works because he beats a lot of people. But he's a threat to go over the top. I mean, the deep ball is always a threat here in Seattle. And then you got Tyler Lockett. Oh, Big 12 guys do I have a soft spot for. But Tyler Lockett's he tore it up at Kansas State, and he's tearing it up ever since he's been in the league. Great punt returner. Phenomenal, just ball skills. I mean, he is just fantastic out there, man. And one of the more underrated guys in this league. Really been a fan of Tyler Lockett ever since he's come into the league. And I think he really could potentially be a Pro Bowler this year with the extended thing because he's really Russ's go-to target. And really, he's made some phenomenal catches in the past, man. And then you have Dwayne Eskridge, who they took. Wasn't really a big fan of him. We'll see what kind of role he plays along with Freddie Swain and the other guys they got here. They're not super deep at receiver, which kind of worries me. But then this tight end duo. Gerald Everett, how the Rams picked Tyler Higbee over Gerald Everett, I don't understand. Gerald Everett, to me, I think he's got a huge chance to break out and was one of my favorite players back when he was drafted in 2017. I just don't understand why they chose Higbee over him, man. He's more dynamic. He's more athletic. Can do more things than Higbee. I mean, he can't block like Higbee, but I really like Gerald Everett. And then you have Will Dissly, who has also hit the Seattle injury bug. But when he's out there, man, he's so dynamic. I think Dissly, if he can stay healthy, can be a nice. They can be a nice 1-2 punch there. And they also have Tyler Mabry. Then look at this O-line, kind of suspect. Dwayne Brown, one of the best left tackles in football, has been for a while. The veteran coming over from Houston, had a contract dispute, but is coming back and playing for them, which is big. They also drafted Stone Forsythe, who's a bruiser, man, and he's so tall. Very raw, though. He's going to need to work on his pass sets out of Kansas State, but he's there as well. And then Damian Lewis, who was a nice steal for them that they found in the third round out of LSU, is a very solid pass blocker. Pass blocking O-line. And then they have Ethan Pochich at center, who's decent. They trade for Gabe Jackson, which was a great move. He's a very, very good coming over from Vegas. Powerful guard, good in the polls. Not as great of a pass blocker, but a very good run blocker. Then they also have Brandon Shell there as well with Jay Curran and Kyle Fuller as backups as well. And then you get to this defense, which I'm a little bit worried about in the middle. You have big Al Woods there. Veteran, played a lot of games. Coming over from Jacksonville, I believe. And then Poona Ford, who's one of my guys. Decent pass rusher from the inside, but he's a very, very underrated run defender. One of the more underrated players in the league. And then out on the edge, you have Carlos Dunlap. Been one of my favorite players for years, man, in Cincinnati. Kind of, re-signing here, finding a home in Seattle late in his career. Wasn't what he was, for so many years in Cincinnati, but he's still a very good pass rusher. Rasheem Green will probably kick inside on those pass rush downs, but he's a very solid run defender and has a nice repertoire of power moves. Benson Mayowa going to rotate in there, probably out on the edge. Veteran has a nice speed to power, moves. He's been around for a while. They also bring in Kerry Hyder Jr., which was a nice get for Seattle. Had 8 sacks last year for San Francisco. Is going to be a nice rotation in there. And then I really like Alton Robinson from Syracuse. I think, he's got guys in front of him to teach him some stuff. And I really liked his ability to use his hands coming out of Syracuse. I think he's got a better chance to do anything than Darrell Taylor and LJ Collier, who were big reaches, in my opinion, from Seattle. And they really offer nothing as run defenders either. So they're hoping to develop those two as well, but I see it more in Alton Robinson than either of those guys. And then you go to the linebackers with Bobby Wagner, who's one of the best in football. Can just do it all, man. And he is a smart guy from Utah State. I mean, he is phenomenal, man, coming out of there. Slowing out a little bit, obviously, because he's getting older, but he's still one of the best in the business. And then I think Jordan Brooks has a chance to break out. Interesting pick in the first round last year, but I think he's got, he's a solid player, and, he kind of reminds me of Devin White a little bit. He's all over the field. Ben Burke-Kirven hasn't been able to stay healthy. Would like him out there, in that nickel as that cover guy, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy. And then they have Cody Barton there as well. Then we go to the secondary, which is one of the reasons why this team's in third place for me. I like Trey Flowers. I think he's a solid corner, but I don't think he's a corner one at all. But he does play that cover 3 well. He did get beat a lot last year, though. DJ Reed, they're very high on to make, that next step out of Kansas State. Will he live up to it? I don't know. We'll see. They did acquire Sidney Jones from Jacksonville, who I really like and had a great season last year for them. To play their slot, I think he's probably their best corner. They also have John Reed, who's a nice, solid player out of Penn State coming over from Houston. I don't know how much of an impact he's going to make, though. And they also have Blessuan Austin, who I really liked from Rutgers. He played with the Jets last year. And then they have Ugo Amadi. I think Ugo Amadi should play over some of these other guys. They have him listed as a safety, but he can also play some corner. And then you have Quandre Diggs, who's very underrated. Got respect on that top 100 list, but I don't think he's that good. But I really like Quandre Diggs. He's a playmaker out there, man, for that Seattle defense, and has been underrated for a while. And then Jamal Adams, who's overrated. Not a great cover player, but one of the best blitzing safeties ever. Maybe the best, besides maybe Charles Woodson. Really offers you, you can do a lot with him. And then they also have Marquise Blair and Ryan Neal there. So I think same boat for Seattle. They're probably a 10, 11, 12 win team. I just think it's going to come down to those divisional games. They're always big, but they're going to be even bigger this year for Seattle, man. They're going to be tough. This division is just fucking loaded. So we'll see how it all plays out. It's going to be interesting. Well, my number 2 team is the San Francisco 49ers. And lots of talk about getting rid of Jimmy G, but they didn't do it. He's still their quarterback. As of right now, at least, still their quarterback. We'll see how that ends up going. Jimmy G, for all, his faults, is a solid quarterback. I mean, he's slightly below average. I just don't think he's going to ever be the reason why you win a football game. And he can be, Kirk Cousins, where, if you have a really good defense and weapons around him, he can, play at an elevated level. But I don't even think he's on Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr's level right now. And then Trey Lance. So a lot of people they were like, why didn't they take Justin Fields? I think for this system, because I think Trey Lance is a better passer than Justin Fields and reads, at this moment in time at least, and reads better than Justin Fields and kind of go through his progressions. Now, he needed to work on that too, because Justin Fields' problem was he was looking at the first read and not going to a second. I think with Trey Lance, part of the time is he goes through his progressions too fast and doesn't let plays develop. So I think that's kind of his big flaw. But I think Trey Lance, stud of an athlete, very accurate, doesn't make mistakes. I think he might be a Hall of Famer in this scheme. I mean, seriously. And then their running back room. And poor old motherfucking Raheem Mostert, man. Got hurt again. He just can't stay healthy, man. He is dynamic. I mean, he is the fastest running back in the league when he's out there. But he can never stay healthy, man. And that really sucks because he's really dynamic for this offense. And that's why they didn't want to pay him, because he can't stay healthy. But Elijah Mitchell came out of nowhere yesterday, and really, stepped into that role as their 6th-round pick out of Louisiana and Lafayette. And, kind of took it to him. Took it to Detroit. And then they have JaMychal Hasty, who I've been a huge fan of out of Baylor. One of the better, more underrated running backs in the league. Can catch the football, can run. He's got some oomph to him. I really like JaMychal Hasty. And then Trey Sermon, who was a perfect scheme fit for this team. They traded up to get him, but is currently in Shanahan's doghouse, apparently. I don't know what happened, but I think it's like discipline issues or attitude issue or something, but he's stuck in Shanahan's doghouse, so we'll see how long he's there and if he makes an impact in year one for this team. And then they have Jeff Wilson, who was very good in relief of Raheem Mostert last year when he got hurt, but he also got hurt. He pounded New England, man. I mean, he ran all over us. But Jeff Wilson's also a very good running back. So we'll see him probably be the main guy when he comes back healthy. And then this receiving core, Deebo Samuel's one of my favorite players in the league, man. He is so physical. Reminds me of Anquan Boldin a ton. I mean, he gets that football, and he is a raging bull after the catch. I mean, fantastic player to watch, man. Really, really love him. Coming out of South Carolina, and was perfect for this scheme to run those deep crosses and get those jet sweeps and those jet touch passes and really be schemed up touches here from Shanahan. Really love his game. And then Ayuk, who's also in the doghouse, was primed for a big season after having a solid rookie year. That hurdle last year against Philly was one of the best plays of the season last year. Just a phenomenal play. They're also saying it's a hamstring, but I heard that he was in Shanahan's doghouse and had just one target on Sunday. So, he's dynamic for them, man. They really need him to kind of step up and be that wide receiver one or Samuel. And then they have Trent Sherfield, who's a solid vertical threat for them, can play in the slot as well. Good route runner. Underrated guy. I think he's coming over from Arizona, I believe, last year. Then they have veteran Mohamed Sanu, who's physical, kind of like Deebo Samuel. I think he's just a better route runner when he was like in his prime. But here's a veteran who's going to help these guys learn. And then they have Juwan Jennings, who's remembered for that Tennessee Hail Mary against Georgia, when Tennessee was actually relevant with Josh Dobbs and Kamara. That's kind of his big moment, but he's a big-bodied physical guy, kind of different from what they had. He's kind of more of that go up and get it type guy, which they really don't have. So I'm interested to see if he's ever incorporated into the offense with McVay, Shanahan there, and then Richie James, who I really like, solid slot guy, has a lot of speed, return man potential, kind of like Samuel in that he's going to get schemed up touches. He's just, the opposite of Debo, where he's speedy and, quick and agile, and Debo's very powerful as a receiver. And then Jalen Hurd, who's the converted running back, who's never gotten on the field. But if he does, I mean, he'd be really interesting in this scheme. He's never been able to stay healthy. And then this tight end room, George Kittle, top 3 tight end in the league, best blocking tight end in the league. He really turns, with the ball in his hands is something else, man. I mean, he can outrun you and he can run you over. I mean, there's no, no way to put it. Ross Dwelly, solid possession blocking tight end along with Charlie Warner. These two guys, they emphasize blocking at the tight end position in San Francisco, and those two guys do it very well. And I'm a fan of Ross Dwelly. Solid guy out of San Diego. Decent backup. And then relevant fullback alert, the best fullback in the league. Might be a Hall of Famer, honestly, with really kind of keeping the fullback position alive, and Kyle Juszczyk. Such a special part of this offense, man. He carries the football, he blocks for them, he catches the football. Juszczyk really doesn't get enough credit for really carving out a role in the league, and he did it in Baltimore and has done it here in Shanahan's offense. It's really been elevated. He's not necessarily a focal point, but he definitely, he gets his he gets his touches, and he does the most with it that he can. So he's he's a very unique football player in this league. And then this offensive line, that's one of the more underrated ones in the league. You got Trent Williams, who's the best run blocking tackle in my opinion in this league. Right there with David Bakhtiari for the best tackle in football. Silverback, man, just an epic name for an offensive lineman. Then Laken Tomlinson, who's been so underrated here as a first-round pick, formerly of Detroit, out of Duke. He really has kind of revitalized his career over in San Francisco. Phenomenal, athlete. He really helps them in that wide zone run scheme that is here in the Shanahan offense, and he really, he's an underrated pass blocker too. They bring in the veteran Alex Mack over from Atlanta. Experience, definitely wasn't the player he was last season. Definitely took a step back, but is a very solid center. And then they have Daniel Brunskill, undrafted player out of San Diego State at right guard, probably their weakest point. Him and Aaron Banks are very close on who should start there. And then they have Mike McGlinchey, who's a former first-round pick out of Notre Dame, who, has been okay. I wouldn't say he's lived up to that at hype, because he doesn't really have, he's not very quick. He has an anchor, does well against power rushes, but gets beat often on the edge off of speed. And then you go into this phenomenal defense. So in the middle, you have DJ Jones, who's a solid run defender, along with Kevin Givens and Zach Kerr, who are, solid veteran run defenders, don't really offer you much as a pass rusher. And then you have Javon Kinlaw, who was their replacement for DeForest Buckner. Really phenomenal. I mean, he really was perfect in this scheme fit coming out of South Carolina, and just kind of battled injuries and really didn't have that great of a rookie season. But, I don't think he played in week 1, but hopefully he can shrug off those injuries and get back in there and be a real difference maker for that that San Francisco defense. And then they also brought in Mo Hurst, which was a championship move. Can't believe he was released by the Raiders, who already don't have a pass rush as it is. But Mo Hurst, I think, has the ceiling. The sky's the limit for this dude. I think he's a force to be reckoned with. I'm really high on Mo Hurst. I just can't wait to see him in this San Francisco scheme. And then Arik Armstead, who's going to move inside on those pass rush downs. They decided to keep him over to DeForest Buckner, which was questionable, but Arik Armstead did have a really good year last year. Very powerful dude out of Oregon, former first-round pick. We'll see how he plays this season. Has always been a solid guy there for them ever since he's came into the league. And then D Ford, who would be the starter if he could ever stay healthy. If they get anything out of D Ford at this point, it's house money. The dude has not been on the field for a long time now since coming from Kansas City. Then you got Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa's a stud, man. Phenomenal rookie year. Did not have the sack numbers that people thought he would, but I'm here to tell you that Nick Bosa is a game changer, man. Absolute freaking monster out there on the edge. I mean, he has all the tools. I mean, he's enough said. He's insane. And then they bring in Samson Ebukam, which is a loss from the Rams in my opinion. Really liked him in that one really good season, and then kind of fell off last year. But Samson Ebukam is a solid rotational pass rusher in here, and he's going to get his for sure. And then they bring in Arden Key as well, who's kind of been a failed project out of LSU from the Raiders, looking to revitalize him maybe. Then you get to these linebackers. Fred Warner's just maybe the best in the league. I love this kid, man. He is just phenomenal. Phenomenal cover guy. Very good against the run, but he really shines in his ability to cover guys. I mean, it is stupid, his ability to just cover anybody on the field. I mean, it's Eric Kendricks level. And then Dre Greenlaw to a pick six. That's him too. He's a very solid cover linebacker. Not super great against the run, but Dre Greenlaw makes his money against the pass. They also have Azeez Al-Shahir, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, and Marcel Harris, who are decent. Then you get to the secondary. Definitely lacking in depth now with that injury to Jason Verrett, man, who's such a phenomenal football player. He just has never gotten the best luck with injuries. Was finally healthy last season, I think after like 3 or 4 years in a row of being hurt. But he's a guy that could be a Hall of Famer if he was never derailed by injuries. He was that good. But they have Emmanuel Mosley, who played solid for them last year and has looked good for them so far this year. But I don't know if he'll be available for week 2 or not. He was very, very good for them last season. Really stepped up with the injuries, but we'll see if he's available. Diamador Lenore has looked really good in camp out of Oregon, and has really kind of flashed for them, and is looking to step into a prominent role this year with their injuries. Kawan Williams is a decent player along with Amory Thomas, and then they bring in the veteran Josh Norman, who's been around for a long time, to kind of, potentially be a starter with Jason Verrett going down, which is not ideal, but Josh Norman's a veteran and, will provide them at least a decent starter. Then you get to these safeties. Jimmy Ward, I've never been a huge fan of. I always thought he was a little bit overrated, but he does play a very important role in this defense and is looking to continue to, kind of get back to his 2019 season. He was hurt before that, had a really, really good 2019 season when they went to the Super Bowl. And then 2020 got hurt again and just kind of fell off. And behind him is Talanoa Hufanga from USC, who's a very nice player, has nice range. We'll see how much they utilize him coming off the bench. And then they have Jaquiski Tart, who I've been a big fan of. Can play kind of both safety roles, can play in the box, can play nickel as that strong safety and really help out in that run game, and then can kind of play, that high safety role that's more of that free safety role, as he has good range there. And then Tavon Wilson, a veteran, coming in there, former New England Patriots draft pick. So looking at their schedule, I think, San Francisco has the potential to win this division for sure, be an 11, 12, 13, even 14, 15 win team. They're just that good. And they have the benefit of the doubt playing a fourth place schedule. So that gives them a good advantage as well to win the division. But I think this team, the team in front of them, the stars are aligned for them. I think they're really set up to win this division and really take advantage of this opportunity, and that's the Los Angeles Rams. And it starts with Matthew Stafford. Let's talk about Matthew Stafford for a minute here. I've been the biggest Matthew Stafford advocate for a long time now. Everybody wants to rip on Stafford for not winning a playoff game in Detroit. I'm here to tell you, the only the only guy that really you can say had, I mean, he had Golden Tate, he had Marvin Jones. They're solid receivers. They're not going to, they're not Hall of Famers or anything, but Golden Tate made a couple Pro Bowls, and Marvin Jones was always a solid number 2, but Calvin Johnson was a Hall of Fame talent, okay? One of the best receivers I've ever seen play. But you can't just win with only Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson. I mean, Detroit never had a defense with Matt Stafford there. I think the only player that I can think of that were relevant on the defense when he was there was Ndamukong Suh, Darius Slay. That's it. I think that's it. Honestly, I don't think they had anybody else relevant on that defense. I'll look it up after this video to see if they had any other Pro Bowlers, but I'm pretty sure those are the only 2 Pro Bowlers they had. Maybe DeAndre Levy before he got into his legal trouble, and Ziggy Ansah. That name just came back to me. But other than that, man, they had nobody. They had nobody on their defense, and and he never had a run game. I mean, Reggie Bush ran for 1,000 yards, but in his time in Detroit, I think there's 12 games where he had a 100-yard rusher. 100-yard rusher, 12 games. And one of them, I know Shaun Hill started because I was at that game, Thanksgiving. It was my first Patriots game. And I don't even remember the dude's name. It was like something, I want to say like Steve Slayton, but I don't think it was him. I think it was somebody else. Went for like 200 yards for Detroit. Like just out of nowhere. But he really hasn't had any help, man. And his management and ownership has been just absolutely fucking incompetent. I mean, they have just wasted draft pick after draft pick and have not gone after anybody. I mean, they did go after Golden Tate, Marvin Jones in free agency. But, like, his offensive line has never been great, and they never really went after anybody prolific on defense that I can remember ever. And the coaches he's had, Jim Schwartz, defensive guy, Matt Patricia, defensive guy. I don't remember the guy they had in between. I think it was Jim. Jim Caldwell was actually a decent head coach, and they fired him. Like, the one good head coach they fire him. And I'm like, dude, what are they doing? And then, they have Dan Campbell, who I actually really like Dan Campbell, man. I mean, he showed something. They want to play for Dan Campbell there in Detroit, man. And it would have been interesting to see Stafford with Detroit this year with Dan Campbell, but anyways, back to the Rams. I think Stafford and McVay this year is going to be unfair. I think Stafford's the MVP. Just the way they can utilize him in this offense is just ridiculous. And I truly think that Matt Stafford is going to be the MVP this year, and I think he started off great in week 1. And then John Wolford sticking around here as the backup. Made a couple starts for them when Jared Goff got hurt, and I think it was very telling that they had Wolford start the game against Seattle in the playoffs when Jared Goff was good enough to go. I think that was very interesting. That was kind of the sign that Jared Goff was going to be traded. And then Bryce Perkins, kind of a gadget-type player. Could be like a Taysom Hill, honestly, out of Virginia, undrafted, kind of, a poor man's Lamar Jackson out there. When he played at Virginia. Then you got this backfield that, is going to be suffering from missing Cam Akers, which sucks. Because he was about to have a huge year 2 for LA in this scheme and really kind of step up and be one of those, more talked about backs in the league. But Darrell Henderson's finally going to get his opportunity out of Memphis. I did like him. Was okay in week 1. I think the Rams this season, if they can run the football consistently, are going to be, truly a Super Bowl contender. And then you have Sony Michel, who they trade for New England. Chip, props to New England for doing that trade. Kind of missing him right now with Ramondre Stevenson in the doghouse, but only had 1 carry on Sunday night. I think once he gets more comfortable in this offense, they're going to work him in, and he could take over that primary back role from Darrell Henderson, and then they have Jake Funk there as well. There's a rookie, I think he's undrafted. No, he's a 7th-round pick from Maryland coming in there and playing. as well. I don't think he got in on Sunday night, though. Then you have this receiving core with Robert Woods, one of the best route runners in football, been one of my favorite players for a long time. He's just so consistent. Always open, man. Him and Cooper Kupp, they always seem to be open. And I think Cooper Kupp's going to be kind of like Golden Tate was for Stafford. It's just kind of that go-to guy to when he needs a play, he's going to go to Cooper Kupp. And then Van Jefferson, who's their deep threat, who was one of my breakout candidates, and second, third play of the game, catching that touchdown pass from Stafford was awesome to see. Love seeing him in that new wide receiver 3 role. I think he's going to be dynamic for them this year for McVay. And then you have Tutu Atwell, who's kind of, they're going to, groom him to be kind of Deshaun Jackson's replacement as that deep threat. I don't know how much of an impact he's going to be because he's really small. Like, Tutu Atwell's like 165, which is really tiny for a receiver. But he's really young and has a lot of room to grow, and I think was an interesting pick from Sean McVay as kind of a premier weapon. And then Deshaun Jackson, who's been doing it in the league, been one of my favorite players for a long time. Miracle at the Meadowlands Part 2 is just iconic. I mean, that will forever be remembered. He will forever be remembered for that by Eagle fans and NFL fans around there. Sorry, Giants fans. I'm sorry, Minardi, for bringing that back up, but that was a great moment. I'm sorry, Minardi. Tight end, Tyler Higbee. Again, don't really see the point in picking him over Gerald Everett, but they like him better because he can block and help out in those run plays that they use. And then they have Bryson Hopkins, who was the top tight end in last year's draft. Really was not utilized at all last year because of Everett and Higbee ahead of him. But I'm excited to see if they can use Bryson Hopkins this year after he had no catches at all last season. So we'll see if Bryson Hopkins can get involved in this offense. And then this offensive line that has taken hits over the last couple of years. You bring in Andrew Whitworth here. Dude's like 39 and is playing at an elite level at left tackle. It's hard to gauge when he's going to fall off, but Whitworth is truly, I think he's a Hall of Famer at left tackle. And then you have David Edwards, as a left guard. Decent player, 5th rounder out of Wisconsin. Wisconsin knows how to make offensive linemen, so I think, he's going to be, at least average there. Then they got Brian Allen, Austin Corbett, average, and then Rob Havenstein, who's an above average right tackle. And then they have some decent backups there as well. Then you get into this defense. Interior, you got, in my opinion, the best player in football, and Aaron Donald, just absolute ridiculous. If you don't think he's defensive player of the year every year, I don't know what the fuck you're doing. I wouldn't vote for anybody other than Aaron Donald for defensive player of the year, unless if somebody breaks the sack record. A'Shawn Robinson, solid player coming over from Detroit, very good run defender out of Alabama. Not as much of a pass rusher, but is definitely a very, very talented run defender, and is a decent pass rusher. Just mainly a pocket pusher though. Sebastian Joseph Day is going to be their nose tackle, locking up the middle there, and really taking on 2 or 3 guys at once and plugging up the middle. They don't really have much behind them though that I like for depth. And then on their edge, Leonard Floyd, former first-round pick. Aaron Donald has really kind of, made Leonard Floyd look like a first-round pick again. He was solid in Chicago, but never really dominant like they want him to be. And he really had one of his best seasons last year in his first year in LA. And then Justin Hollins, who they picked up from Denver last year, had a really nice season last year here. I really liked him. And he was kind of a spark for them last year off the bench. So we'll see if he can, continue to improve. He had a really nice game on Sunday night with 2 sacks and a forced fumble. He has all the making to be a talented guy. Then they also have Terrell Lewis, who's a solid backup there as well. And then in the middle you have Kenny Young, Troy Reader, which I think this is one of their weaker positions, but I think Kenny Young has a nice chance to step up here and become, an above average linebacker for the LA Rams. And then at cornerback, you have Jalen Ramsey, best in the game right now, in my opinion. Jair's right behind him, but Jalen Ramsey's just a different beast, man. And the difference with Ramsey, I think, with most corners is not only is he, absolute lockdown in zone coverage, but he will come up and tackle. I mean, you saw when he put Golden Tate on his ass last year, he will come up and make plays in the run game, which I think makes him an even more special corner. Florida State, man, they know how to make their DBs. And then Darius Williams, who 5'9", playing on the outside, only the Rams, man. Really showed out last season and had a breakout year. Was really dynamic for the Rams and is a solid cover corner. And then you have David Long there stepping in at that nickel position there. And then they're kind of thin at corner. They also have Robert Rochelle there, and not much else. And then a safety, Jordan Fuller, 6th-round pick out of Ohio State last year. Really was surprising. One of the more surprising rookies, really stepped up in his role. And then Taylor Rapp going to take over that position for John Johnson as kind of that in-the-box extra linebacker there. And then they also have Terrell Burgess, Juju Hughes, who I really like out of Utah, Nick Scott, and J.R. Reed. So looking at the schedule, the Los Angeles Rams, I think they're between 11 and 14 wins, 14, 15 wins. They got some tough matchups for sure. They got Tampa Bay. Of course, you got to go to Seattle, San Francisco, and Arizona with your division games. You got to go at Green Bay. You got Tennessee. You got at Minnesota and at Baltimore, so that it's really going to come down to those divisional games. They're going to be even more important this season for this team. But I think if Stafford plays as well as I think they do, I think they're going to win this division. And I truly think that Matt Stafford's the MVP this season. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Finally got these previews done, and my power rankings are coming out tomorrow. Week 1 edition of power rankings. So, we'll see, how that goes. Week 1 was epic, man. It was really fun. I'm going to be breaking down every game on Wednesday as well. That's probably going to be a longer episode after a shorter episode tomorrow. But thanks for all the support, man. I really appreciate you guys. I'm on the grind, man. We're going to get a modem, be able to break down film so I can go more in depth on these games. But, for right now, just got to do what you got to do, trying to make this, my living at some point. But thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you've enjoyed these so far. I know they're long, but, I'll try and keep them a little bit shorter. So, but thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time on the Underdog Podcast, and have a great day. Peace.